last night, James Comey appeared on CNN. And appearing on CNN, he was asked basically to rip everyone inside the Trump administration, to talk about how evil the Trump administration was, to talk about how President Trump obstructed justice. Now, James Comey has a dog in this fight. Okay, James Comey his firing led off the entire obstruction of justice debacle. It was James Comey's firing, which, by the way, was perfectly appropriate. He should have been fired as soon as President Trump took office. Frankly, Obama should have fired him after he did that press conference about Hillary Clinton back in July of 2016. But James Comey was fired for cause. He was bad at his job. He was politically motivated. His politics were all about preserving his picture of the FBI as an institution. But Trump fired him. And then Trump basically said that he fired him because Comey wouldn't say publicly that Trump wasn't under investigation, which was true. Trump was not under investigation. Comey wouldn't say it. He explained to Trump why he wouldn't say it. Trump got frustrated. Trump fired him. Then Trump went on national TV and said, well, I guess this Russia stuff is done because now we can openly say I'm not under investigation. That's what Trump meant. James Comey and the rest of the media took that to mean Trump fired Comey in order to stymie the investigation. Now, as we know, the investigation was not stymied. We keep hearing there's been a cover-up. There's been obstruction. We keep hearing that President Trump is involving himself in the nitty-gritty details of the Mueller report, of the investigation, in an attempt to prevent public knowledge of the nefarious activities in which he participated. I've seen not a lot of evidence of that. The fact is, we are all privy to the Mueller report. The fact is, Robert Mueller, James Comey was fired in the middle of 2017. It is now the middle of 2019. It is 2 years later. That is when we got the Mueller report. So for 2 full years, Robert Mueller had access to pretty much everyone inside the Trump administration, to millions of documents, to grand jury testimony. So the idea that James Comey's firing represented some sort of obstruction of justice is simply absurd. But Comey is very invested in that narrative because otherwise he got fired for being crappy at his job. And that James Comey can't accept. So he's been going around for the last couple of years taking aspirational pictures of himself in great places of nature, looking up at the forest, looking down at the ocean, and then pondering life. Well, now he's back on CNN. He's being brought back forth by the media to explain exactly why it is that President Trump is a very, very bad, cruel, bad orange man. So here is Comey explaining that Trump obstructed justice, according to James Comey. I'll explain how absurd this is in just a second.
There are now, I think it's up to 800 former federal prosecutors who've worked in both Republican and Democratic administrations who have signed a statement saying that Mueller's findings would have produced obstruction charges against President Trump if he weren't president. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
No doubt.
No doubt. Again, there's 10 different episodes. I actually think the ones that would be most likely charged are not necessarily the ones that involved me, but particularly this McGahn episode and another episode where he was trying to get the Attorney General to limit the investigation only to future elections are examples that any reasonable prosecutor would charge.
Okay, so that is really an amazing statement by James Comey. Now, the reason it's an amazing statement is because the reason that Trump could not be charged with obstruction of justice is because obstruction of justice is, in fact, a crime that requires intent. It's a crime that requires you to intend to obstruct justice. You want to stop the investigation because you think it's going to uncover something. In the absence of an underlying crime, it's very difficult to obstruct justice. Because what exactly would your intent be? Just because you're annoyed? Like, that doesn't really meet the intent portion, which is why when William Barr explained why he had not decided to indict Trump on obstruction of justice, he pointed to 2 factors. 1, Trump's mental state, and 2, the fact that there was no underlying collusion for Trump to cover up. Right? That was William Barr's take, and that is a correct take. James Comey is saying that take is entirely wrong. Trump had the requisite intent. Okay, question. It was James Comey, I remember, who said about Hillary Clinton that Hillary Clinton was not guilty of violating rules about classified material because she did not have the requisite intent. You know where intent is not an element of the crime? When it comes to the mishandling of classified material. You do not have to intend to expose classified material to prying eyes. You do not have to intend to do anything wrong. It is a strict liability crime. If you take classified materials and you put them in public view, you are guilty of the crime. James Comey personally wrote intent into a law that had no intent, and now he's writing intent out of a law to castigate President Trump, which does demonstrate a fair bit of political bias on the part of a guy who proclaims that he is a wonderful law enforcement officer without any bias. James Comey went on to explain that the DOJ should actually charge President Trump when he is no longer president.
You think he should be charged when he's out of office?
I think
based on what Mueller has shown.
Well, I think the Justice Department will have to take a serious look at that. Whether it's a wise thing to do to a former president, I don't know. That's a harder question, a much bigger question than the facts of the case.
But do you think the evidence is there to prosecute.
Sure looks like it's there with respect to at least a couple of those episodes of obstruction.
Okay, so, the idea that he is going to now push forward that Trump should be prosecuted when he's no longer president, well, again, you know who could have made that call? You know who could have said that? Robert Mueller could have said that. Right? Robert Mueller had every capacity to say, listen, according to the DOJ rules, according to the Office of Legal Counsel, it is unlikely that you can prosecute the president on these charges. However, I would recommend an obstruction charge against the president were it not for these OLC rules, meaning that he should be prosecuted when he's no longer president. Robert Mueller could have said that. He had every ability to say that. He did not say that. Why? Not because he didn't want to. I mean, it's pretty clear that his team wanted to get Trump. It's pretty obvious his team thought that Trump did immoral, bad stuff. That's the entire volume 2 of the report. But the fact that Mueller didn't do it is somewhat telling. Here's what's really going on. James Comey is mad because he got fired.